Hello, I'm Sarah Ketchum with the Newport News Police Department's Public Information Office. This is the Arrested Minds podcast, where we are having conversations about mental health. Rejection hurts. No one likes to feel left out, but there are some instances of rejection that can have significant and life-altering consequences. Joining me today is Officer Watlington, who has an especially painful story about rejection. Her parents, siblings, and other family members cut off communication with her after she decided to leave the Jehovah's Witness church. Hello. Tell me, what was it like growing up a Jehovah's Witness?
Well, pretty much our whole lives revolved around the religion and the church. It's everything we do, it revolved around it. We would go to church at the time. I guess they've changed how many days they go now, but at the time it was like 3 days a week we would go to church. And then even on the days that we weren't going, we would have like family Bible study. So it was just, our lives were basically like saturated with being a Jehovah's Witness. We weren't allowed to have like friends outside of the religion. Of course I had friends at school that I would call my friends at school, but all communication stopped like after school. Like there was no like, oh, I'm going to hang out with such and such, or I'm going to so-and-so's house. Like we weren't allowed to do that. It was only our friends who were supposed to be Jehovah's Witnesses. And I mean, that was pretty much how it was. They kind of like teach you how to act and talk. It was just, your life is so saturated with it that there's no like boundaries, or you really don't have room to make your own decisions in life. It's more so, hey, this is what you're supposed to do, and that's just it. Even as far as like, having opinions or asking questions about the religion, that was really frowned upon, more so because if you question the religion, it was like you were considered an apostate. So it's like, okay, well, you're not even supposed to ask questions about it. Even like the history of the religion, they would like frown upon us asking that. It was just what they taught. We were just supposed to say, okay, yes, okay. And that was the end of it.
So why did you decide to separate yourself from the church?
Well, I kind of always knew that I didn't agree with the religion. Even growing up, like as a teenager and stuff, it was just kind of like, okay, there were some things that I didn't like, and I've always been very opinionated, and I'm a free thinker. My mom even used to say all the time, you're my opinionated child. But I mean, I was always like that. So I kind of always knew like, this isn't really how I want to live my life. So I turned 18 and I moved out, and I stopped going to like their church and stuff. And at that time, my family, they would still talk to me, but it was, they were like, oh, well, you need to come back. You should come back to the church and stuff like that. It wasn't until I actually got pregnant with my daughter that that's when like they cut me off basically. I got pregnant with her, and because I wasn't married, they said, okay, well, we'll give you an ultimatum. Either you can leave, my daughter's dad, and we were together for like 3 years before I even got pregnant, but she's like, either you can leave him and come back to the church, or you all need to get married. And even then, get married and still come back to the church. And I was like, no, like you're not going to force me to do something that I'm not ready to do. Like I'm not going to get married, and I don't want to come back to the church. So at that point, they were like, okay, well, we can't have anything to do with you anymore. So
then what happened?
Well, after that, it was like my whole life changed basically. Like I said, because you are so saturated in the religion, it was like all my family. So, I mean, that's like my parents, my brother, my sisters, aunts, uncles, grandma, like everybody, cousins, like they were all Jehovah's Witnesses. So everybody that like I had in my life, they just like cut me off. They wouldn't talk to me. They see me on the street, they walk right past me like they don't even see me. Wow. So of course that changes a lot of your life. I actually started going to a therapist at that point, and the therapist compared it to if like everybody in let's say you have a family and friends, and everybody in your that's your family or friends, they were all murdered at one time. Like that's what she compared like what I was going through as. And so of course it was like I was grieving that loss basically, and I was like the loss of everyone that's been a constant my whole life. I was just grieving that loss. So of course, I mean, that's going to have an effect on you, and you're going to feel some type of way about it. So
right. So how did that affect you?
Well, of course, I went through days of being depressed, and like my anxiety was so bad because I always, and I mean, honestly, to a certain extent, even now, I'm still kind of that way. It's just my anxiety is so bad. Like, well, everyone's going to leave me. They're going to leave me anyway because, well, I mean, my whole family left me. So, of course, anybody else is going to leave me. So it kind of, like, I think it's more so of like I have a fear of rejection. I push people away because it's kind of like, okay, well, if I can prepare myself for it mentally and emotionally before it happens, then, it's not going to bother me as much. So I think that's more so what I do now. And then it's just like, I'm always waiting for the ball to drop. Like I always think like something bad's going to happen because I feel like this is probably one of the worst things that could have happened, losing like my whole family basically. So it's just like, okay, well, I'm expecting things to go wrong.
Have you had any contact with them?
I have contact with them, but it's only for, it's weird because this actually made it worse. They would only call me if it was like bad news. And so like that was another thing that really affected me because they would call me, let's see, one of my sisters, they found out she had cancer. And so I hadn't talked to them in maybe a year, maybe 2 years. And like, they called me one day and I'm like, well, why are they calling me? And they called me to tell me, oh, your sister has cancer. And I'm like, I haven't talked to you. Like, why are y'all even telling me? That's not fair for you to tell me like that she has cancer. You don't share anything else with me, but that's what you want to share bad news with me. And it was the same way my dad got really, really sick at one point. It was really bad. And this was right after I had my son. And I had an aunt that kept reaching out to me saying, you really need to go see your dad. You really going to go see your dad. And I just kept ignoring the messages. I'm like, no, I'm trying to move on from y'all being in my life. So then my other aunt, my dad's sister, who I'm really close with, she actually said, hey, I want you to go, you should go see your dad. So I did it because she asked me to do it. So did that, went saw my dad. The first time I went to the hospital, he was like still out of it, but my mom and my sister were there, and that was the first time they got to meet my son, because he might have only been like 1 or 2 months old. So they, got to meet my son. So then maybe a couple of days later, my mom calls me and she's like, hey, well, your dad is awake now. You all should come by the hospital so he can meet, his grandson. So I'm like, okay, okay, I'll go. And I went there, and my boyfriend at the time, he's like holding the baby, and he's like, showing my dad, and my dad's smiling, and I'm sitting like at the foot of the bed, basically at a chair, like facing the bed. And my mom was like, hey, you see who that is? You see who that is over there? Like talking to my dad. And my dad looks up and he's like, oh yeah, I see her. Like he saw me, and he almost died and he saw me, but no big deal, whatever. So of course that just brought back all that anxiety and all of that depression and stuff again, because it was just like, here I am still trying to come forward and be a better person and be the bigger person, and you all are still treating me like this, even in like life or death. You all are still treating me the same way. So, and then same thing happened. My sister, my oldest sister, she actually died in a car accident, and it was the same thing. Like they called to tell me that. I never forget, it was the day before my daughter's birthday, but they called to tell me that. And so, it was weird because even at like the funeral and stuff, like I didn't feel right. Like I didn't feel a part of the family. So it was like, I still felt out of place even at the funeral. Like, and my mom was like telling me to come up front with the rest of the family. And I'm just kind of sitting there like, I don't know if I really want to go up there. Like, I don't feel a part of the family anymore. And then even after the funeral, one of my aunts, like she walks up and she's like, are we allowed to hug her? Can we hug her for stuff like this? Like asking my mom. And I'm like, really? Like, so you have to ask permission to hug me because my sister died? So, it's just, like I said, that's pretty much the only time they contact me. And even now, like, they want to see, like, their, like, my kids, they want to see their grandkids and stuff. And so, like, with my daughter, her dad, they just, like, exclusively started dealing with him. Like, they were just like, oh, they'll call him to see if they can see my daughter. And then now it's the same way with my son. They kind of just like contact him. And they might contact me every once in a while, like, hey, we want to see the kids. And I'll be like, okay, well, I'll see what their dad say. But they still don't really contact me about anything else. My brother got married, has 2 kids, and I wasn't invited to the wedding. None of that. So, yeah.
So have you ever tried to have a conversation with them about this?
I did, actually. I've said, like, things to my mom before, but it's one of those things like they are not going to change their outlook on things because their life hasn't really changed. And I mean, that's kind of like the way I look at it. It's like, they're not the ones whose life has changed. Like, you know, my parents, they still have each other. They still have, you know, my brother and my sister. Now they've in a way gained a daughter because my brother got married. So it's like they, you know, I'm not in the picture anymore. So they've gained a daughter now because my brother got married. So they still have all their friends, all their family. Everybody's still supporting them in their corner, where it's like, then it's just me just kind of left like over here by myself. So like I've tried to like talk to my mom about it, but I know there's like no reasoning with them because they believe, they're very strong in their faith. And I mean, I feel like with any religion, people, which is a good thing, people with any religion, they're strong in their faith, but they're so strong in their faith that it's like, well, we don't even want to hear what you have to say. Like, yeah, this is your opinion, this is how you feel, but it doesn't matter. Like, if you want to be a part of this family, you need to come back, you know, to the church and to the religion. So, I mean, it's been kind of I know it would be pointless to say anything else to them.
So how have you dealt with it?
Like I said, I started going to therapy, and my therapist is great, by the way, but just talking with her basically, and one of the things like she told me was to keep a journal. And this is like advice I even give to like my friends and other people who are like struggling with things. It's like, keep a journal, because you write down, and I didn't write like every day. It wasn't something that I wrote in every day, but it was just like, when I would remember, I would write in my journal just about my day. So if I was having a bad day, I was writing about that. If I had a good day, I would write, okay, well, this is what I did today, and it was a good day. And one thing I've learned is I actually pulled my old journal. This was a couple of weeks ago. I looked at my old journal and I'm reading through the stuff, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like the stuff that I was so bothered by back then, it's like, it didn't even, like, now looking at it, it's like, I can't believe I was so upset about this stuff back then. It just didn't have the same weight that it did back then on me. So it was nice to kind of look back and be like, okay, well, obviously things got better for me, you know? So some other advice that my therapist gave me was just like trying to set boundaries. So, you know, she's like, it's okay to not answer your phone for them. It's okay to, it's okay to tell them like, hey, I don't want to hear it. Like, don't call me and ask me about this. Don't talk to me about this. Like, I don't want to hear it. There's nothing wrong with setting boundaries. And that's one thing I've done. I mean, it might sound silly to some people, but like for me, like I changed their names in my phone. Like, it's not mom, dad anymore. You know, it's just by their first name. And it's just like, I have to kind of pull myself away from that relationship because, and I always tell people this, I'm like, they raised me to be a certain way, but then it's like, they still expect me to act that way even though they're acting different. So it's like they raised me to be respectful. They raised me to be loving. They raised me to, you know, be all about family. But it's like they're not displaying those qualities. So therefore, I need to tell myself, okay, well, you just need to step back and you don't have to do that anymore. Like, you don't have to do it. If they're not going to reciprocate it, then you don't have to do it anymore. So like I what if a lot about things. And so that was something else my therapist said, you know, just bad things happen. Yeah, but they get better. So don't like, what if the situation to death? Like, okay, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? Just let things go the way they go. Because I mean, they're always going to work themselves out one way or another. So,
right.
Yeah.
So what about your relationships with your friends? Do you have a system of support outside your family?
I do. So I have wonderful friends, and that's more so something that I've told myself. It's like, you know, I'm building a new family. Like I said, I have 2 kids, and it's like, that's my family now, you know? So I'm building my own family, making my own memories. And I'm not so obsessive anymore about the fact that like I don't have my parents and my definitely my immediate family, but really all my family, but definitely my immediate family, that I don't have them anymore. I'm just looking at it more so now like I'm building these other relationships with people who actually want to be in my life. So I mean, that's something that's also helped me just to try to remember that, hey, I do have people that love me and that support me, and, you know, they're there for my kids. And I mean, it's kind of helped me, and I have to just remind myself of that. And I have to do it constantly to remind myself of it. Like, okay, well, this is your family now. This is, you know, how it is. So I mean, that's one thing I have done. Another thing I just thought of that my therapist suggested was writing a letter to my family. So this was a couple years ago. I was going to write separate letters to them, but then I decided once I started writing, it was just kind of like, okay, I can write to everybody at once. So I wrote a letter just basically saying all my feelings of how I felt and just how everything was. And at the end of it, it's like I felt no need to even send the letter. So like I still have it. Like it's on my laptop. Like I still have it. But I don't know. It's just like a weight was lifted off of me when I wrote that letter. And I didn't feel the need to like tell them like, hey, this is how I feel. I didn't feel that need anymore. Where before I wrote the letter, that's how I felt. But it was just kind of like, I'm good now. Like I don't need to write it. I've kind of gotten everything off my chest, you know? So like I said, it's your family, they raised me to be a certain way, but it's like now I'm able to just kind of like move on and grow from it, you know? Like they showed me, of course, growing up, like they raised me to be a certain way, but it's like now that I'm an adult, they've also in a way shaped me to who I am now, because it's like, okay, well, now I'm going to focus more on my family, and I've learned to let go, and I've learned to set boundaries, and like that's really because of them that I've had to do that. So I mean, in a way, it's still helped me grow over the years.
So what advice would you have for someone else who might be in a similar situation?
Just that everybody struggles, everybody goes through low points. Like you never know what someone is going through. I'm a big advocate in therapy. Like honestly, like I feel like every adult should go to therapy. I mean, it's even if it's something small, like there's nothing wrong with talking to somebody who you know is not biased, and they're going to actually listen to what you have to say. They're going to give you advice. It's just, I feel like therapy is like a huge help, and I'm not ashamed to say, like I tell everybody like, oh, you should go to therapy. You should try this therapist, you know, like that's what you should do. So, you know, regardless of what you have to do, whether it's therapy or it's medication or, you know, just maybe taking a mental health week to kind of just make sure that you're okay. Like, I feel like it's just, things will always get better. You just have to take care of yourself mentally. It's just mentally and emotionally, you'll end up being so drained with certain things, and your feelings, they just take over you. But it's just very important to make sure that you know that it will get better and that you seek help and assistance, because there's nothing wrong with asking for help. Like I ask for help all the time. So there's nothing wrong with asking for help, especially when it comes to your mental state. So I will say, and this because this just happened actually, with it being like Suicide Awareness Month, I had a friend that posted on, it's a girl I grew up with that posted on Facebook, and it was like I guess it was like a stat or a post, and it was just saying like, if you would have committed suicide, how many years would it have been, like, since your suicide attempt? And she had like 3 separate dates, and it was just like, yeah, I think one was like 10 years, it was like 8 years, and the most recent one was like 1 year. And it just, I mean, it hurt my heart so much. And it's like, I sent her a message and I was like, hey, like, I know we haven't talked in years, but you know, it just saddened me to see that post, you know, and I'm just like, I know we haven't talked, but like, if you need me, like, here's my number, you can text me, whether you need me to come get you out of the house or just sit on the couch with you and do nothing, like, regardless of what you need, like, you can call me if you feel like that low, you know. And so, you know, she messaged back and was like, oh, you know, thank you, I appreciate that and stuff. But I mean, it's just, there's people going through stuff that you would never think that they're going through. And I mean, whether that's like, and it could be like one of your closest friends and you might not even know. So I think it's just very important to make sure you check on people also. Because like I said, I haven't talked to her in years, but now, like, seeing that, it just made me want to even call my friends, like, hey, you doing okay? Hey, you want to come over? You know, like, it's just, you just need to check on people that you care about. So
when you were really struggling with this, did you hide it? Did you talk to your friends about it? How?
Well, there are like some of my friends that knew, because we've been friends for so long. But now I'm very vocal about like my situation. But like before, I really wasn't. It was just, if the conversation ever came up, then I would give people like bits and pieces of, oh, well, this is how it is with my family, you know, my situation. But I really wasn't that vocal about it. So knowing that now in hindsight, of course, that's how it always is in hindsight, I'm looking back and I'm like, I did have people who supported me and that I could have talked to. And I think that's more so why I'm such like an advocate for, hey, it's okay to ask for help. Like, I didn't do it, and I had some really low points in my life, but like now looking back at that, it's like all I had to do was just ask for help. And I mean, I try to even make it a point now to, if I have friends that I know are like depressed about stuff, or they're feeling a certain way, I'm like, hey, like, get dressed, I'm coming to get you. Like, we're just going to go out and shop all day, or we're just going to go out and just do something to get them out of their funk, because I want them to know, like, hey, I do care and I'm here. And, if you need anything, like seriously anything, I'm here for you. So I think now, and I'm hoping that my story, anybody else's story, will help people to realize, like, hey, you do have people out there. All you have to do is just ask and they'll help you out. So